Let's see here. I think we're on, but I am not sure. So, okay. Let's see. Cecilia, are you here? Can you hear me? Hi, supposed former infatuation junkie. Hi, how are you? Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good. You guys can hear me. So, yay. Yay for that. I like it is seriously beyond ridiculous how much I struggle with technology. I don't understand how it can be so complicated. So, okay, somebody had a question. Hey, Doug. Me myself is here. Cecilia's here. Candy's here. Monk is here. Supposed former infatuation junkies here. So, Monk. Okay. So, Monk says, I have so many questions. First, how do you deal with survivor guilt? Talk a little bit more about that. What in particular are you having trouble with? And Doug, while we are waiting for Monk to respond back, I'm just curious if you had kind of given any more thought to some different ways that you're more comfortable with like filling your buckets and what you had to just kind of what your week was full of. Cecilia says, I'm having a rough week as well. Brian asks, how does a narcissist change who wants to? So if a person is a narcissist and they want to change, I would say, see, here's the thing: is most narcissists that are truly, we're talking like clinically speaking, NPD, narcissistic personality disorder type narcissists, they, um, they tend to not have a desire to change. So, I'm a firm believer if anybody has a sincere desire to change, then they can. So there's actually quite a few groups out there for abuse. Really, mainly it's for abusive men. I haven't come across any groups for like abusive women. Not that that's because women aren't abusive. It's just that I think the group is just the kind of the stereotype that is out there that men are abusive. So there's many groups out there on the internet for abusive men, generally physically abusive men. But it's the same type of personality and kind of mindset and way of relating to people. So I would suggest if a person really is a narcissist, that they would consider joining some groups like that and talking to other men that are really committed to changing. Again, I wish that there was more out there for like, for women that are abusive and that they can get help, but I haven't really come across too many resources. Here's my concern with telling you to go there, though, or encouraging you to go there, is that a lot of victims that have been partnered up with narcissists, or people that come seeking information about narcissism, they tend to not be narcissists. In fact, they tend to be the exact opposite. They tend to be more on like the codependent side of the spectrum. And the reason that they're thinking that they're narcissists is because they might have been told that they were the problem for a really, really long time to where they began to believe it. Another reason for that can also be if a person's in a very unhealthy or abusive dynamic for a long time, they tend to take on the character traits of their partner. And that's kind of normal in any relationship. But I think in abusive situations, it tends to be almost like a survival mechanism. So a lot of this kind of dysfunctional behavior, I believe, can be unlearned. But I think it's going to be up to you. I would encourage you to join a handful of different groups online and, see kind of which groups you resonate best with and then kind of go from there. Okay. Let's see. Supposed former infatuation junkie says, how do I know if the person I'm dating is a true narcissist or just a jerk? Well, you don't. And because you don't, all you can do is kind of go based off of what you do know, which would be the behavior that you're experiencing. So if a person's a jerk, that alone is reason enough to break up with them, right? Because you can't have a healthy relationship with a person who's a jerk. And you would want a healthy relationship. Anything less than a healthy relationship is just going to lead to hurt and heartache and headaches. So, I think a lot of people kind of get caught up in this idea. I was there too, where it was sort of like I was dividing up the world and people in the world into really two different groups, that there were normal people and that there were toxic people, and that the toxic people were more kind of like the narcissists or the sociopaths of the world. This is very kind of black or white thinking. And the reality is a person does not need to have a personality disorder in order to cause a lot of damage and destruction in your life. So, just kind of paying attention, you want what you're screening for. And that's exactly what it is. That's what you're doing is when you're in a relationship with somebody and you're building that relationship and you're dating, it's very much like an interview process for a job interview, meaning that you're interviewing them. And so it's really important to go into that with your eyes wide open and to not rush into intimacy, to not rush into having sex, to not rush into, telling deeply personal things to each other. And, to just go slow and make sure that they are who you think that they really are. And so during this time, if you start seeing this kind of red flag behavior, we're like, wow, this person's a real jerk, then it's a lot easier to walk away. A lot of kind of us that are on the more codependent side of the spectrum, we tend to hang into really bad situations, hanging on to hope, hoping the person can change, and, trying to fix them or fix the situation when really, honestly, I talked about this last time. So if a relationship, it doesn't give you kind of on a scale of fulfillment, 0 to 10, 10 being extremely fulfilled, 0 being not at all. If that relationship is not at least a 9 on that scale, then it's time to go back to the drawing board and to keep your options open and to start looking for other people. So a lot of us, I think, tend to find, somebody who is like a 6 on that kind of our ideal partner scale. And then we're glossing over all these red flags and then we're trying to make that fit. So, date somebody for who they are today, not who you kind of hope they will be in the future, because that really sets us all up to fail. So, okay. Lots and lots of questions going on here. Overcoming Understanding says, Dana, is it okay if I talk about the empty buckets on my channel? I don't want to steal your idea or concept, so let me know if it's okay. That's totally okay. Run with it. I need to really update that video. So and I keep thinking I am going to have time and I keep not having time. I will try to get that done kind of more this weekend, and get that up so you can see, because I think kind of the more expanded view on this concept is, it's really it's a big deal. Like that's kind of a game, in my opinion. It's a real game changer. So I'll try to have that video up. I need to make a note to myself by Sunday. How about that? By Sunday night, and then I'm making a note here. Sunday night, empty buckets. And then, yeah, and then you can just feel free to run with it. So let's see. Okay, Cecilia's talking about yoga. I miss yoga. Yoga is expensive. Yes, yoga is expensive. But there's oftentimes a lot of places that offer free or donation yoga too. So just something to keep in mind. So you might want to check it out and see if you have anything like that in your area. Oh, Doug says my Buddha board is out of the screen. You're absolutely right. It is. Here, we will. I don't know. There's a time delay on this thing, so I can't see. Here, I'll sit next to it. You can kind of somewhat see it. Let's see. There. Okay, we're good as long as I don't move, because it's not. This is not a long-term solution here. So great idea, Peace Pom Pom. Peace Pom Pom says, for excellent and free yoga, I highly recommend the yoga with, I think it's Adrienne channel on YouTube. Yeah, great idea. Yes, yoga on everything is on YouTube. It's so neat. Okay, King Koopa says, Dana, I was hoovered this week after being discarded right before Christmas. I know this is common, but why hoover now? Well, again, it just kind of because they can. They might be feeling, wanting some attention after the holidays, or bored or horny or lonely. So it's really hard to say. Kinga says, when they hoover, what is really behind it? For me, it comes in such a crazy way, such as fake Facebook accounts. Well, the reason it's probably coming via fake Facebook accounts is either they have a significant other who they don't want to know that you're you guys are chatting, or maybe you've blocked them, so they have to do something like that. But really, I think it's really important to know that manipulative people do not attach to regular people in the same way that regular people attach to regular people. So don't confuse this kind of sudden attention, the sweet talk, the kind of level of intensity with any positive emotion. It's all about them. Okay, so H King says, what is hoovering? Okay, hoovering is, great question, is a technique that's done by manipulative people and it's named after the Hoover vacuum. And so what it is it's designed to get the victim to reopen communication with them, and so that they can suck the victim, like the vacuum cleaner, suck the victim back into the relationship or the dynamic. So yeah, and I read a great quote the other day in one of the books in the book club group, and I think it was The Gift of Fear. And he had said, if you've told somebody 10 times that you don't want to talk to them, you've told them 9 times too many. And I thought that was really, really well said, because that's really kind of what it is. It's sort of like when you go no contact, it's all you need to do is just assert that boundary, and then prepare yourself emotionally for them to circle around and potentially hoover, potentially tell you everything that you really want to hear, that they love you, that they miss you, that they're going to change, that given enough time or hope or God or therapy or rehab, that this time is going to be different. That's kind of what the underlying theme is for a lot of the Hoovers. It does tend to, yes, overcoming understanding says it's a diluted form of love bombing, dosing, or giving like breadcrumbs. Yes. And so dosing, so what overcoming understanding is talking about is dosing is like a diluted form of love bombing. So dosing, it's like giving a dose of medicine. It's kind of the bare minimum required in order to get what they want. Whereas love bombing tends to be like very lavish, extensive displays of affection where they're, you're talking to them all the time. They're, there's tons of sex, there's tons of attention, there's tons of, or if it's with like a sibling or a parent or that kind of thing, they're giving you lots of time. They're making you feel very important, these kinds of things. Once that initial love bombing stage wears off, after the person goes through that cycle of narcissistic abuse, which it goes idealize, which is that love bombing, devalue, and then discard. Once they go back around in the cycle, back to that love bombing, it's more of dosing. So they're giving that victim, they might be, instead of tons and tons of time texting, it might be, one or two texts. Or again, it's just kind of the bare minimum to keep them in there. So Cecilia says, my ex dropped off a meaningless bag of stuff the other week, stuff I could definitely live without. I have a feeling he was trying to open up contact. And Overcoming Understanding says, yes, Cecilia, definitely. And I would agree. Really, any form of communication, whether it's, texting, calling, Skyping, in person, through a coworker, strange stuff like that, I would assume, just err on the side of caution, I would assume that it's always going to be an attempt to reopen communication. So just keep that emotional shield up. Oh, you weren't home. That's good. That's good. That worked out. Oh, Martine is here. Hello, Martine. Overcoming Understanding says, I have my ex's CD collection, mostly Beastie Boys and Weird Al, but I don't know any 12-year-olds who I can give it to. Haha. That's hilarious. I'm just waiting for him to call me for it. And I'm sure that he probably will. So, I would kind of maybe beat him to the punch on that, to where that's not hanging over your head. So if you could give it to, if you're feeling like emotionally solid enough to deal with this, you could, give it to a mutual friend. You could just, you know, give it to, non-emergency police, something like that, and let them know. Or you could just throw it out and just say, you know what, it's been over 30 days. I didn't hear from you. Something like that. So Jay is here. Toxic Relationships No More is here. Okay, I'm going to scroll back up. Let's see. That's a great point. Overcoming Understanding says they hoover for two main reasons. They either feel low and they need you, or they feel great and they want to rub it in your face. Absolutely. Let's see. Recovery Miss Williams says, why are my comments not showing? I have supported Dana from the start, but first time commenting. I'm not spamming. Um, are you talking about commenting on in the video section? If that is the case, I hold all of my comments for review before I have them go live. So there's generally a like, depending on how busy I am, like a 24 to 48 hour time period, because I'd like to read through them all and I'd like to respond to as many as I possibly can. If you're not, I warmly welcome anybody that's leaving links that's related to, narcissistic abuse recovery. So that, I encourage people to post, their YouTube channel or kind of what they're doing. So I think the more information that we can get out there, the more people can potentially heal, because there might be people that really don't resonate with me, but they really might resonate with you, or with somebody else. And so different people, I think, just resonate with different people at different times. So if you have posted a link to your channel or to your website or whatever in on one of my videos, and if it's not showing live, then odds are I haven't read it yet and I haven't approved it. D says, I like this. I like the little side bangs, Dana. Thanks. Yeah, I got my hair cut like last week or 2 weeks ago, and my bangs were a little too short. So, yay for vitamins, for like vitamin B and having my hair grow. So let's see what else. What other questions here? Okay, so Pula is asking about no contact is for you because you are addicted to them. I know I am addicted to her. So yes, and this whole concept. I'm laughing at Doug. He's giving me a hard time about my vitamin B and my short bangs. The whole concept of that feeling addicted to them. Okay, so this is very much, there's a large chemical component that goes into falling in love with somebody. And I was just reading an article about this earlier today. As a matter of fact, it was really, really interesting. And they were saying that they've done some studies, and some of the chemicals are some of the tests have shown like low serotonin levels, which is also found in people with obsessive compulsive disorder. And what else did they find? There was another chemical that was off. It wasn't oxytocin, wasn't vasopressin. I can't remember which one it was, but it was basically that feeling of addiction, like addictive behavior. So if you're new to kind of my channel, I have this whole concept of empty buckets, and it's basically, and I still need to get my little drawing made up on Fiverr. And this is really like like low budget production here. But so I have my little drawing on the empty buckets. And so this is the bottom tier of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for those of you that are familiar with it. And so to me, I kind of just condensed the buckets down into I just made it a lot simpler. So there's the bucket of safety, there's the bucket of significance, and then there's the bucket of stability. And so within that bucket of significance, which is really what a lot of us are trying to fill when we're in relationships, has to do with love, affection, attention, importance. Stability has to do with the fact that it'll remain that way, and then safety has to do with kind of more physical, basic physical needs. Food, clothing, shelter, these kinds of things. So the reason I bring that up is because if you're feeling this feeling of craving towards them, that addictive, I must contact them kind of feeling, it's because, in my opinion, that you're running really, really low in one of these buckets. And so if you can identify what it is, maybe it's loneliness, right? So maybe it's kind of that bucket of significance that's feeling really low, and that's the need that they were filling for you. Then to try to fill your own bucket instead of looking to somebody else to fill your bucket for you. So I strongly encourage people to join meetup.com. It's a great way. It's not a dating site, and it's free. It's a great way to meet a lot of like-minded people, and to just kind of fill that empty bucket without them, because it's the whole thing. Like, the universe hates a vacuum, right? So if a person was filling a big role in your life and all of a sudden they're gone, you're going to feel this feeling like a huge void. And that void, it'll be a lot easier to move on if you can get busy filling that void. It's sort of like quitting any addictive habit, right? So for example, I used to smoke like a long time ago, like 15 years ago. And so when I quit smoking, I didn't just quit smoking. I had tried just quitting smoking and I was making me and everybody else around me absolutely nuts. Because I still had cravings. I was very fixated on that. And I was just trying to just not smoke. What made me successful with quitting that addiction was taking up a positive kind of replacement habit. And so it's the same kind of concept with, you know, uh, any type of addictive behavior, especially with relationships. So, spending time with friends instead of this person kind of helps to scratch that itch and move forward. Recovery, Miss Williams says, codependency was my downfall. I think it is for a lot of us out there. And here's the kind of the tricky thing with codependency is it's yet again another one of those words that has a very kind of fluid, nebulous meaning. It's used a lot, but it means different things to different people. And so I really kind of boil my concept of codependency down to filling these buckets. And so a lot of codependent people, we tend to justify, minimize, deny a lot of bad behavior that we experience because we're getting our buckets filled with that person or in that relationship. And it's easier to justify bad behavior than it is to sometimes walk away, even if the relationship is really, really bad. But when we're starved out, if we're starved out, then I think it's kind of our emotional brain's way of trying to protect us. It's sort of like you need to stay in this relationship because, and I think you guys have probably been there, or at least know what I'm talking about. When we're in a relationship, if you're having those feelings of codependency, that tends to be like a real slippery slope into very kind of black or white thinking. It's either this, I'm either with this person and I feel loved and happy and content and I'm going to be okay, or I'm going to be alone and be alone the rest of my life. And so it's sort of like it's hard to move. I mean, if those are the only two options, right? Like those are two really tough choices. Like who wants to make those choices? We're probably going to stay with what's comfortable and what's safe, even though what's comfortable and safe isn't nourishing or healthy. And so this is why it really, really helps to, just kind of get a healthy replacement, not dating another person, but like friendships or volunteering or those kinds of things. And then just move yourself over to that and then start working on your codependency and your boundary issues. I think, and here's the other thing with codependency, is I think the vast majority of people out there have some sort of issue with codependency. I think you could make the argument that narcissists are also codependent. I mean, it's a form of codependency, right? Like they're dependent on us for supply. And it's sort of like there's a lot of like overlap between the two. But codependent people, empathic type people, tend to be coming from a place of goodness, where we give and we give and we give. Whereas narcissists, it's the same kind of issues with the same kind of empty buckets, but they're coming at it from a place of they take and take and take. And so we have two very different ways of kind of dealing with the same issues. Overcoming Understanding asks, have you read The Human Magnet Syndrome? I have not, and I really would like to. I was emailing with Ross Rosenberg way back when, and I like my emails, my inbox is a hot mess, and so yeah, kind of long story short, we did not connect, and it was 100% my fault. So she's saying I should read the book. I will do that. Maybe we'll make that the book club book for February. So I would like to do one, I'd like to kind of rotate them instead of being so heavily fixated on the narcissist, I think it'd be good to at least explore, right? Kind of codependency and, different types of healing and mindfulness and kind of some more other positive, forward momentum kind of topics. So, hey, B Major's here. Let's see. Somebody had asked about the grand finale. So, with the grand finale, that tends to be, and I'm not sure if you got your question answered, so I'm not sure if this is a duplicate here, but it tends to be really like this. I mean, imagine like a grand finale with fireworks, right? It's just like the high point of the drama and the chaos and the pain and the hurt, and it's really where that whole situation turns into an absolute like lifetime TV movie. Like it gets so crazy and there's so much craziness all at once, and it tends to be where the mask slips off and it's a lot of and it's still not everything. You're probably never going to know everything, but it's where a lot of the lies, the cheating, the stealing, the deceit, the manipulation, the double or triple life, it's just where kind of more of what they've really been up to starts coming to the surface. So yes, overcoming, understanding, saying, you might have had little breakups before that suck, but this one is like boom, it is insane, and it really is. And they oftentimes tend to really enjoy making it as highly emotional as possible. I don't know if there's ever been, there probably haven't been studies done, but my guess would be for the victims that tend to commit suicide, it's right around that kind of time. Because especially if they don't know what they're going through, it's so crazy making and it's so intense and it is so painful. So they will do things like they will wait until your birthday or until they find out that you've got a family member that's terminally ill, right? Or you're going on your way to a funeral, or it's you just found out you're pregnant. There's going to be generally some sort of like highly emotional event, and they just snowball it into this like just super intense moment where the victim just thinks, I can't handle any more of this, and it's just crazy making on so many different levels. King Koopa says, my coworker just committed suicide about a month ago after a grand finale. Oh, wow. I'm so sorry to hear that. It's that would be the time that victims do it. And part of me almost wonders too, I think when victims do commit suicide or do attempt suicide, it's a way for narcissists to feel, get even more attention. And it also now there's only their side of the story, right? And so now it's just disgusting. It's just disgusting behavior what they do. But now they really play like they're the victim. Like, look how troubled my partner was, right? And I really took care of him or her, and it just, yeah. So yeah, interesting. So let me scroll up here a little bit. Martine says, my ex broke up 2 days after Valentine's. That Valentine's Day we spent making love all day, and she gave me a card saying, I will never just leave you like that. But then she did. So yeah, Martine, I had a very similar thing happen with Steve. And it was very, very strange. Like, he had it was, I don't even remember, it was like a Friday night or something, and he had gotten a phone call in the middle of the night. He was saying it was his son, and that there were some issues, and his son is an adult. And I just kind of got this funny feeling about things, and I had said, I told him, I said, because we were kind of clashing heads on religion and stuff, and I had said, if you're feeling like you want to go back, or if you're, because he'd come from another state with me, let me know, and so I can prepare for this financially and get everything in place, and then, kind of no hard feelings and all that. And then he upped and left like 48 hours later. And it was so like unnecessary. That's what didn't make sense with it. But Jack was the same way. Like it was just, here I am thinking that I'm in a relationship with these men that really seemed to have really fantastic, open and honest communication. And then they didn't. And then it was this, it was just drama, like unnecessary drama. And that was really kind of what resonated with me at the very end of those relationships. I'm like, why would you do this? Like, I was totally fine with you kind of, leaving or whatever, but you had to make it, like, it's so teenage. Like, it just was so ridiculous. Okay, Cecilia says, I feel so empty and unlovable even with everything I know about this. Okay, Cecilia, I get it. I think everybody here gets it. Okay, because that's what these relationships do to people. Okay, and it's really, really, really important that you learn how to love yourself and how to, not be lonely. So there's a difference between being alone and being lonely, right? And just because a person's single doesn't mean that they have to be lonely. And this is where it goes back to getting those buckets filled and spending time with friends and getting out there and cultivating your hobbies and volunteering and doing these kinds of things. So it's really important that you don't date until you get those buckets full. And she says, I'm working on that daily. Okay, that's awesome. And yes, and just realize their behavior is so not a reflection of you. It is so, so, so not a reflection of you. It is a reflection of them. And, you are worthy of love. I felt the exact same way, if that helps at all. I was just telling an acquaintance of mine this the other night, like, I mean, I would cry. I would just cry and be like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so unlovable? And it's not, and here's the kicker thing, right? So like, I was looking outside of myself for love. And I know it sounds so cliche, but like, I really had to learn how to love myself first and foremost. And once that kind of gets in alignment, then other things click into place too. But, yeah, there's so many similarities between all of our situations with these different manipulative people, but there's also a lot of similarities between us with the victims, right? And I have just seriously met some of the neatest people doing these live streams, doing these videos, in Facebook and so on. Most victims by and large are incredibly compassionate, giving, solid, kind human beings. So it's, Martine says, well, you're really not unlovable, Dana. Well, thank you, Martine. You're really not unlovable too. But that's what they want us to believe, that it makes them feel smug and superior. It's for us to buy into their reality. Let's see. Oh, these comments are going so fast. Okay, great question. King Koopa asks, why is it so hard to explain narcissistic abuse to your friends? Why can't they understand the trauma you went through? It is because it's one of those things that until you really live it, you can't even begin to explain it. So to a lot of them, it really feels, or they perceive it as, well, it was just a bad breakup, right? Like, they don't get it. And I think in large part, it's because people have this perception of what abuse is. And so they think that, abuse is physical abuse, and that it's only visible physical abuse. So it's like, bruises on your face kind of a thing. And really, and I should say, it's only visible physical abuse if you're a woman. So if a woman attacked a man and gave him a black eye, society would be like, well, he probably deserved it, right? Which nobody deserves to be hit. It's abuse is abuse is abuse. It doesn't matter what gender a person is. That's a whole nother topic. But because if a person goes through emotional abuse or verbal abuse, that's not visible to other people, and so they don't understand kind of the grinding down of it all. They don't understand the highly emotional, kind of when it goes from a fairy tale to a Lifetime TV movie. They don't understand that because they don't see it, and so this is you know, abusers, the number one tool for abusive people is isolation. And so they isolate in many different ways. Love bombing is a form of isolation. They can do physical isolation by wanting you to move away with them, or quitting your job can be a form of isolation. And so abuse tends to happen in isolation. So it doesn't tend to happen in front of other people. It happens behind closed doors. It happens like, after the party. It happens over the phone, these kinds of things. So people really don't see it. And so they don't understand it. It just doesn't compute for them. And I would strongly, strongly encourage you to, if you're having trouble getting validated by your friends and family, to to stop, to just kind of like just let that go, because that is going to bring out even more kind of stress and anxiety and resentment and irritation within you. And instead, I would encourage you to turn your time and attention to finding places where you can feel validated. So support groups are fantastic ways to get that validation, because it's a lot. Especially there's groups, I have a group on Facebook. There's lots of different groups on Facebook. There's people in there 24/7, and so everybody has been there, done that, or is going through it, or is healing from it. And it's that's where I would encourage you to spend that emotion. For me personally, when I went through everything, I even though I went to go see a therapist who was working within the agency that I worked at for domestic violence, she did not identify what I was going through at all. I didn't identify what I was going through at all. I couldn't figure out why I was having kind of PTSD type symptoms, why I was waking up in the middle of the night screaming or crying, why I couldn't trust people, why I had such crippling anxiety, why I was having night terrors, why I felt so crushed. I'd had bad breakups before, but nothing like that. So, okay, Spesh says, what is CPTSD? I've never heard of that, and I'm wondering if narcissistic abuse victims commonly have it. So, yes, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, and so abuse victims in general tend to have it. And so it's a lot of the same kind of symptoms. It's wanting to isolate yourself, having night terrors, having trouble trusting people, having panic attacks, having anxiety attacks, depression, anxiety, just feeling like you don't know which end is up, being really, really easily triggered. So, and here's a point I wanted to touch on, because I did this and I see a lot of people do. I think this is just really normal. It's, there is, when we go through something traumatic, our brain tends to link up what it thinks caused us that pain. So it's always kind of scanning the environment for potential danger. Well, if we're in an abusive relationship, and because abuse tends to be very erratic, especially if it kind of just all comes out at the end, and there's all of this trauma that the victim hadn't experienced before with this person, then your brain's going to link up what was different about this event versus other events that might have been similar. So, for example, a lot of people, this is what I call learning the wrong lessons. And so a lot of people, their brain will link up that maybe men equal pain, or like dating equals pain, or that I give the example, Jack was European. So I told my, well, I'm not dating European men anymore. Like, that's not related. Or, you know, uh, if a person, let's say, if the abusive person works at McDonald's, then the victim might find themselves like their stress level really increasing every time they pass a McDonald's, even if it's not the McDonald's that their abusive person works at, because their brain is, it's just associating, it's kind of grabbing at straws, thinking like what was different, and so there's just all of these triggers there. And so yes, emotional flashbacks. And Martine is saying how people can zap you into feeling helpless by simple remarks. So yeah, a lot of that, yes, is just kind of that being triggered. And here's the thing with like triggers is everybody that goes through an abusive relationship of some sort has them, and other people don't know what they are. And so, a lot of and I see this in support groups all the time, where somebody might, they might get upset and they call somebody, they might be like, hey, hey, calm down, like a seemingly kind of, not that big of a deal, but maybe their abuser used to say, hey, calm down, you're overreacting. And so now they're like, who are you to tell me to calm down, don't tell me that. And then they like really kind of overreact to that. And it's easy for people to get triggered. So, and it does take time. The triggers do tend to subside over time. The PTSD type feelings, like on average, from what I've read, tend to last about 18 to 24 months, depending. I'm hesitant to even put a time frame on that, because I think healing takes, here's the thing with like healing, it's not that time heals all wounds, it's what you do with that time that really makes a difference. So if you really get busy pouring yourself into building a good life for yourself, pouring yourself into filling your empty buckets, making that decision, that declaration, not even a decision, that declaration of that you're not going to let this ruin your life, I think kind of doing those things early on really help to kind of accelerate that healing process. So, but if you're sitting at home the whole time, and you're not filling your empty buckets, and you're and it's and definitely there's no judgment, or I'm not coming down on anybody, because I was there too. Like with Jack, I didn't, if I showered, that was a good day. So I know how easy it is to be in that overwhelm and just be like, I can't handle my life, I can't function. But if these relationships end and you're finding yourself not functioning, it's going to be you're going to have a harder time kind of building that forward momentum, because there is no momentum there, right? Like you're in this kind of holding pattern. So here's the thing with kind of building momentum in a positive direction. If you're finding yourself so overwhelmed or so depressed, that's kind of just this kind of neutral energy, right? Like it's there is no energy there, right? It's just kind of like flatline. Any energy that has, emotion in it, even if it's anger, even if it's rage, even if you know enjoyment or excitement, or anything that kind of has energy to it, is better than being depressed and kind of apathetic and tuned out. Because once you start getting that emotion going, then you can work on kind of steering it into making it work for you. So even if you're feeling a lot of feelings like rage, or like extreme anger, which is really common, and that will most likely come in waves, to to just throw a saddle on that anger or those emotions, and you make it work for you, and you kind of ride it. So I used a lot of that anger and that energy to organize like everything. So you just try to channel it in positive ways, and keep telling yourself over and over and over again, the best revenge is a good life, and that you're not going to let them win, that this is your life, and you're making the declaration that you're not going to let them destroy it. So that is, Cecilia mentions music is so therapeutic. Yes, it is. And so here's the other thing with music, right? And I'm glad you brought that up. Music is a fantastic kind of backdoor, sneaky kind of way to get yourself into feeling some sort of energy, feeling some sort of energy. So because a lot of music evokes a strong emotion. It can make a person really angry. It can make a person feel really happy. It can make a person feel sexy. It can make a person feel, any number of ways. So if you're feeling really down, that I think is a great way to, you know, to get into an emotion that makes you feel something, because it's depression can really be kind of like an emotional quicksand, and it can be really hard to get out of it, especially if it just keeps rising. So let's see, lots and lots and lots of questions here. So let's see. Nisa says, I just wish I could stop them from targeting anyone else. I hear you on that. That was probably one of the hardest things I struggled with as well. Jack and I lived in a small town, and I worked at a domestic violence shelter there. And, you know, I think the odds of him dating somebody that I had been an advocate for was probably pretty high. And I had a crushing amount of guilt when I left because of that. And I just felt so powerless over preventing any of it. Nobody would listen, it's the same. Everybody's got the same story. Like, nobody would listen to me, and nobody, saw him for what he was. And so it's hard. So I see where you're coming from. It's really hard to just walk away and to focus on you and your healing. Okay, Naysan is talking about her narcissist. She's been in a new relationship and have moved on. He still won't go away. If you can block him across the board, and I don't know how you'd feel if you feel like putting some sort of restraining order on him would make things better or worse. I mean, sometimes restraining order is not the way to go. Sometimes it can make things a lot worse. So it's your situation best. Lavina says, how do they behave in social media? My narc used to write poems. Ha ha. Yeah, about like that. On social media, they tend to, they're very much in the public image, and they're very much all about protecting their public image. So they tend to be really on their best behavior. They tend to post a lot of a kind of attention seeking kind of things, especially if one relationship ends and they start another one. They very quickly tear down all traces of the old relationship and quickly replace it with the new one. And they make it seem like, they don't even miss a beat. I mean, it's the most hurtful thing if you're a partner with one of these people that you can go through. But this is what they do. So it's not you. This is what manipulative, narcissistic people just do. And of course, it's to kind of save their public image. It's to show, like, see, I'm healthy, I'm well balanced, I'm lovable, see how quickly I moved on. And then and of course, a lot of people, for whatever reason, fall for that. To me, that's like a huge red flag. Like, dude, you were married for 20 years last week, and you just got married to your secretary, like, that you've known for 3 weeks. Like, that's not saying, healthy people don't do that. So, but that's what they do. They really make this like kind of lavish display on, especially Facebook, about they're like the world's greatest parent, or, you know, kind of what have you. King Koopa says narcs are good actors. Yes, they are. Different masks for every situation, and it's really, really creepy to see that. And people believe them. Yes. So here's another part of the conversation I was having with an acquaintance of mine tonight. Tonight? I don't know, it's tonight or the other day. Is how a lot of people, myself at times included, tend to confuse a person being nice with a person being good. So think about that, because a lot of us this is kind of, with small children, we teach them, don't talk to strangers, don't take candy from strangers. Strangers that are problematic tend to come across as really, really nice, right? They offer children candy or a puppy, or they want to be their good friend. And so kids know this. And it's weird because somehow along the lines, as adults, we tend to forget that. And then so we just think, well, if that person is so nice, they can't possibly be abusive. Like, that doesn't compute. Or we make the mistake, and this is the conversation that I was having with this acquaintance of mine. We were making the mistake of, I was making the mistake of confusing a person being friendly with a person being a friend. And so a lot of people, I think, do this as well. So there's a difference between an acquaintance and a friend, right? An acquaintance is somebody who is nice, that you know on a very casual level. A friend is somebody that you can call at 2:30 in the morning and be like, I don't ask, you don't want to know, but I need the keys to your car and your social security number. And a really close friend is gonna be like, okay, they're there. Point being is that they're there for you in a pinch, kind of no questions asked. So let's see. Recovery Miss Williams said, "Oh my God, I said earlier the narc is grooming like a pedophile. I was abused as a child." Okay. Yes. And that is exactly it's so I would say that most pedophiles are narcissists. I think most abusive people in general are narcissists. It's that blinding degree of selfish behavior at any cost, right? It's using and abusing other people for their own personal gain. So there is a lot of grooming behavior that goes on with any form of abuse with any person of any age. And so children, when children are abused, that's exactly what abusers do, right? It's this whole concept of, see, we're really close, and I'm a good person and you can trust me. And then they start abusing them, and then they spin it back to the child, and they're like, okay, well, this is our secret. And you, maybe they might even say like, well, you led me on. And then now the child has all of this inappropriate guilt, and they're intimidated and they're scared and they don't know what's going on. They blame themselves. It's very much a similar dynamic with adult victims. So here's some examples of grooming behaviors too. Silent treatment is, I think, a great example of a grooming behavior. It's showing the victim, if you do this again, then this is what's going to happen. And so, the victim, let's say, for example, she or he brings up cheating. Like, hey, I saw on your phone that you were talking with your ex, and I'm really not okay. Like, what are you thinking? And so instead of having open and honest and sincere solutions oriented communication, they shut down completely to punish the victim. And then they spin it back around being like, well, you've got issues with trust, you've got issues with commitment, or with men or with women, or kind of what have you. You're jealous. I can't handle your behavior. You're the problem. And so now the victim finds himself apologizing for nothing, right? And so then the narcissist might not talk to them generally it's for days or weeks or months. And it's to really prove that point. And it's so bad that the victim is like, please, 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 just whatever. Like, just talk to me. Just talk to me. Like, don't freeze me out like this. Other forms of grooming behavior would be asserting their opinion, kind of leading up to like power and control. So saying certain things like, I don't like it. When you wear red nail polish or red lipstick, you look like a whore, and I don't want to be with a whore. Or you dress too sexy, or you don't dress sexy enough, or I really, if your hair, like my hair is long and dark, right? Well, I really want you to have blonde hair, short blonde hair. And so it's all of these little boundary pushes, and they're grooming, just like a dog, they're grooming the victim into being what they want them to be. And if you've ever gone through something like this, then you can never win. So even if you are doing everything that they want you to do, it's still never enough, because the whole goal with that grooming behavior was never for it to be enough. The whole goal was to keep asserting power and control over the victim, over the victim, over the victim, and then moving the bar, and then kind of sending them on this emotional roller coaster because it makes them feel significant. So they might say, you know what, I really want you to lose weight. And so the victim loses, 30 pounds. And then they might say, well, I really want you to lose 10 more. And then the victim does. And then it's like, well, you're too thin. I want you to gain weight because now there's too many men looking at you. And so now the victim gains weight. And it's it's crazy making on so many different levels. So D West says the painting behind Dana's head looks like a Van Gogh. It's not. So this, I'll raise my computer up so you can see it. It's a butterfly. Can you see it? There we go. It's a butterfly. I painted that after. Let me see if I can raise up my screen a little bit more there. I painted that shortly after I found out about Jack's double life. And yes, I actually painted that with my fingers. Interesting little bit of trivia there. So actually, every single thing here on my ledge is different things that I had used. I'm very visual. These are all different things that I had used to help myself, to pull myself through this. So I have my Buddha board here, which it's great. It's a great way to kind of make affirmations for yourself of the different mindsets that you want to keep. And there is no wrong way to do this. So, going online, finding different quotes, or just kind of writing out whatever inspiration speaks to you. And then I have a mermaid here, which is the reminder to swim, meaning like take charge of your own life. Like you got this, you got this. And then there's this dove, which was my reminder to myself to follow my peace, because that was the one thing that I knew for certain. Even though I couldn't pinpoint where I had gone wrong with Jack, the one thing I knew for certain is I did not have peace early on in that relationship. I just had that funny feeling something was off, even though I couldn't pinpoint it. And so then this ball is from a friend of mine gave this to me for Christmas one year, and I opened it up and I said, like, what is this? And she had made the comment. She's like, it's whatever you want it to be. And I loved that as kind of this metaphor for life and for different things that we go through in life. It's whatever you want it to be, whatever you're going to make out of it. And so I try to encourage people to because events are for the their events are neutral. It's kind of, we assign meaning to them. And so if you're going to assign meaning to what you're going through, make sure that it's the most empowered meaning possible. So let's see. Lots and lots of comments and questions here. Oh, Adrian, he's so cute. Adrian says, Dana is the moon. She's wearing stars today. Yes, these are actually like little starfish, and I love these. So I'm a really big fan of what's the word I'm looking for? Symbolism in general, and just kind of different visual reminders. And so there's that the reason I got these earrings is there's that. Have you heard the story about the starfish and the this person's walking along a beach and seeing all these starfish on the beach, and starts picking them up and throwing them back in the water one by one. And the person walking next to him says, well, what are you doing? You can't save all of them. I mean, the beach is full of them. And the old man who's throwing them back in the ocean says, well, but you know what? I made a difference to that one. And so I think that's, kind of, I think with all of this, right? Like we do what we can, we help who we can. And ideally we all pay it forward. So, let's see. Lots and lots of questions. Adrian says, Dana, starting your farm is wonderful therapy, and all of you guys should start one too. So yes, I had posted a picture in Instagram of a super sweet outdoor garden that I would love to have. Yes, that would be my therapy. I would be out there every day. Oh, yay. B Major says, I love you guys. Back in my happy place. I'm so glad to hear that. D West says, this is a nice healing space. Well, thank you. There's just a lot of really just good energy people in in this YouTube channel, and I have to say, in my support groups too, I'm continually surprised as to just how fantastic everybody is. It's really refreshing. Okay, this is a great question. Erica asks, why do so many people say you allowed the abuse to happen? Because it doesn't seem logical, right? If if you and I were friends and I started calling you names one day, or I just turned around and hauled off and smacked you, you would probably get up and leave, right? And so that's how people tend to think of abusive relationships. Sort of like, well, if I would never stay with a person who treated me like that, or yelled at me or hit me. But, you might, because a lot of people do. And it's because it doesn't happen suddenly. It tends to be this very slow process. There's this whole analogy of, how do you boil a frog? And the answer is you put a frog in a pot of lukewarm water, and then you slowly turn it up. So that's how abuse happens, and that's why people, if they're not in it, that's why they don't understand it, because it's sort of like, well, how on earth could you stay through that? And there's so many different factors at play, because abusive people generally are not abusive 100% of the time. It's there's when the good times are really good, the bad, and then there's the bad times are really bad. And people, they don't understand. And so you've got this whole emotional component to it. You have oftentimes a financial component to it. You have a children oftentimes, so there's kind of this connect, this tie. There's so many different factors at play. A lot of times victims, especially if they're in a very physically abusive relationship, they might stay because they're terrified to leave. And so this kind of goes back to the whole like walking on eggshells, where they kind of keep thinking like, okay, if I just let him or her like relax, and if I just don't create any problems, and if I just don't dress too sexy, or if I dress really frumpy, or if I and they're just always trying to like change their behavior to keep the calm in the house, because they don't know what sets their partner off. And they realize maybe by this point that they really are living with a very dangerous person. That And they might think, you know what, if he or she's never going to let me go, if I try to leave, then they're going to come after me, so it's safer if I stay. So lots and lots and lots of different components there, that people, they just don't get it. They just kind of see the one abusive event as, you know and then they see like a lot of kind of media, or like movies. I think about the movie Sleeping with the Enemy, right? Like that to me is like probably the worst portrayal of an abusive person, because the guy looks like a jerk, he looks like an abusive person. Most abusive people don't look like that. They tend to look more like Scott Peterson or Bill Cosby, or people that are very charming and charismatic, and wolves in sheep's clothing. They hide it well. So And it's just absolutely crazy making. And and if people are asking you that, just they're asking, well, why on earth did you stay? You don't have to answer any question that you're not comfortable answering, and you can just say, you know what, there were lots of different reasons, and it's one of those things, unless you're in it, it's really hard to understand it. So let's see. B Major asks, I found a few people leave the support group, as in they graduate from it. Is that the eventual hope? It's a great question. Different people tend to stay or leave support groups for different reasons. The one on my website, I, because my goal with the support group is to address narcissism and narcissistic abuse, but I also want to talk a lot about boundaries and healthy boundaries and self-esteem and codependency. And not saying that those two things are necessarily the same, but opening up that discussion so we can explore our own vulnerabilities, so we can put an end to this, and then healing from this. So, different people, they just kind of, different things resonate with them at different times. So some leave the group because they find that it kind of, especially if it's just like the Facebook group right now is really focused on people that are fresh out of a relationship. There's lots of pain there. There's lots of heaviness there. And it can be very validating when you first get out of one of these kinds of relationships to, a lot of victims, they need to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and like rehash what they went through because they're trying to make sense of it all. But there does come a point in healing where that level of rehashing and that level of pain and hurt gets to be really, really too much for a person to bear. So they have to kind of cut ties and then find a group that's more based on healing or more based on codependency. I would like to have all, three or so, the narcissism, the codependency, and the healing all on my support group on my website. So people can kind of they can stay in the same support group, but then they can kind of transition through the different sections as their healing and understanding progresses. Adrian says, CPTSD stands for, what did you say? That was cute. Cute people trying simple distractions. Yes, that's cute. I like that. Ernie asks, why is B Major's chat not visible? I have no idea. I did nothing. Not me. So I don't see B Major on my, I saw her earlier, but I don't know. Maybe she hasn't typed anything. The three little dots to the side here can what do they do? They can block a user. So maybe you blocked her. I don't know. I don't know. Oh gosh, what am I doing? Okay, B Major's here. Good. We were confused as to what happened and what I did or somebody else did or. Okay, Alexander, that's a great question. Alexander asks, Dana, if I've only ever been in an environment that breeds narcissism, is it logical to believe I've picked up some of it too? That's what I'm afraid of. I would say it's safe to say that you probably have picked up a lot of unhealthy communication, right? Or unhealthy ways of relating to other people. But here's the thing with growing up in abusive environments. So there's what I call, we have role models, right? So like ideally we have healthy, well balanced, grounded, loving, solid people as parents. I think very few people actually have those parents, if they even exist at all. So ideally we have really great role models for how to have a happy marriage or happy relationship with ourselves. if we have the exact opposite of that, which is, very, emotionally, neglectful or abusive, or some form of abusive, dysfunctional parent, what we can do is realize, if we realize like this is very dysfunctional, then you can kind of help to set your course by doing the exact opposite. So, I call it reverse role modeling. So they kind of showed you what not to do. And so then you can focus on doing the exact opposite. But yes, a lot of people, if they grew up around a lot of narcissism, they either tend to take on a lot of those narcissistic traits themselves, or they go the exact opposite way and take on a lot of the codependency type traits, where really kind of poor boundaries, where we tend to justify, minimize, deny, blame, deflect, bad behavior. A lot of codependent people tend to stay in really unhealthy situations, trying to save the other person or hoping that the other person will somehow save them, those kinds of things. But, you know, um, it's like anything else, none of us are perfect. And so if you're finding that you've got some problematic behaviors, because a lot of us do, it's just kind of part of the human experience here. If you're finding yourself having problematic behaviors, then and you have a sincere desire to change, then I fully believe that you can change. It might take a little while, and it might take kind of going around that same mountain time and time again until you fully learn like the right lesson. Kind of like how I talked about earlier, it's really easy to make a mistake and then learn the wrong lessons. Kind of like how I was saying that I did with Jack, or I didn't know where I was going wrong with him, and so I kind of chalked up his bad behavior to maybe he was hypersexual and like really open because he was European, like, or maybe it was because I don't know. So it helps to, and some of us have to go around that mountain several times in order to really figure out where we're going wrong. And so journaling can really help to kind of give you that self-reflection. Therapy can help. Joining some support groups online. There's a lot of codependency support groups out there. CODA, it's CODA, it's Codependent Anonymous. So it's kind of like Alcoholics Anonymous, but for codependents. And there tends to be groups for sure online, but I want to say like almost in every city, they actually have physical groups. So let's see. Cecilia says, I have issues with black and white thinking. I either think of myself as all bad or all good. And I'm working on that in therapy as well. So, yes, and none of us are all bad or all good, and I'm glad that that's something that you're working on, because I think a lot of us tend to kind of take on, a lot of maybe like inappropriate guilt or inappropriate emotions from other people. And so we feel responsible for things that we're not really responsible for, or guilty for things that we did, have no reason to feel guilty about. And a lot of it's just kind of untangling this kind of stuff. See, B major, Okay, so Martine, real quick before I scroll up and lose your comment. The CODA group, yes, I should go sometime, I guess. Yeah, I think it's worth checking out. I've never been to one in person, and there's a ton of them online, too. Jessica says, Dana, my covert narc was Canadian, so I thought his silent treatment might have been a Canadian thing. Yeah, right? Like, it's weird, the stuff that we like tend to associate, but I see it all the time where people will tell themselves, well, they experience abuse, and they're like, well, I'm never going to date a redhead again, or I'm never going to date a Leo again, or I'm never going to date a Catholic guy again, or I'm never going to date a tall guy or a short woman, or and it's just, that's the way our brain works. Like, it just kind of links up what's different about that person versus our previous partners. And so it links up like that's what caused us pain. And that's why sometimes it's hard. We have to go around this mountain several times to really make sure that we've got the right lessons from this. And if we're not learning the right lessons, then we're going to keep repeating this. So, Yeah, I think it's very, very common for victims to do that. Ooh, this I missed a comment that looks really good. Oh, B major. Okay, I did not see your comment earlier. You were not blocked. I don't know what happened and how you disappeared there. B major says I was just asking about my ex emailing me today and looking for support. Can you tell us a little bit more about what happened and how we can support you? I'd be more than happy to support you with that. And then while you're typing, I'm going to scroll up and see if I can figure. Oh, this scroll bar is so not user friendly. There's some sort of discussion here that I missed having to do with virtuous people that were utterly confused by the behavior of toxic people. Um, Okay, so Nazan says, I don't trust people who don't see the narcissist for who they are. It's a vicious cycle. It's hard because they are such charmers and they're so convincing that a lot of people just they don't see it. And you know, as far as like trusting them goes, I guess I chalk it up to they're just blissfully blissfully ignorant, blissfully unaware. I get a lot of not a lot. I get comments on my YouTube site from people that will say, they've never been through it. So they'll say things like, "Oh, well, you're just bitter or you're just jaded or stuff like that." And my response is always like I kind of like how nice to be you that you've never experienced something like this, like, and I sincerely hope that they never ever do, because it is absolutely crazy making and very, very isolating feeling. Speaking of isolating feeling, Martine asked earlier and I wanted to address it about love bombing being a form of isolation. So let me get some water here, hold on. Ugh. Okay. So yes, so love bombing. Now keep in mind, a lot of relationships do tend to have kind of these elements of love bombing to them. And a lot of codependent people or people with empty buckets get sucked into love bombing as well. And so just because a person's love bombing doesn't necessarily mean that they are a narcissist, but it is problematic behavior. So just kind of know that. But when a manipulative, abusive person is love bombing their target, one of the reasons, or one of the motivations for it is it's if you're spending all your time with them, then that's a form of isolation. Cults do this a lot, right? So right away, they welcome you, they embrace you. You're so perfect. There's a lot of that mirroring. The victim feels so loved and accepted, and so they just very quickly, sell their house and move away from their family and just quit their job, and they just set off bombs in their life, and then they move into the cult. Abusive relationships there's a lot of similarity, and so it's that whole if you're talking to them, then you're not talking to other people, and the more you talk to them, especially if they're abusive or manipulative, the more inclined, and this is just partly human behavior, there's kind of like this mirroring component, where you're picking up on their mannerisms and they're picking up on yours. And so you're starting to identify more and more with that other person, and less with the people that you're no longer spending as much time with. And so that's, with the whole rushing of intimacy, it's really, really, really important to make sure that we've got our empty buckets filled, or are capable of filling them, before we kind of get tangled up with, or not even tangled up, before we start trying to date at all. Because if the buckets aren't full, then we're not thinking clearly. And that's how people join cults. That's how intelligent people, right, join cults. That's how intelligent. So it doesn't matter what level of intelligence a person has. It's because it's an emotional decision. That's why they get tangled up in this. So I hope that kind of answers your question. Let's see. Nasan says, I feel, if nothing else, I learned to trust my intuition without the need of validation. Something was off when I fell from my narc. Boy, I love to hear you say that, because if I could pick one message that I could share with other people that are going through this, frankly, people in general, like if I had one message from my life to give, it would be that. It would be to follow your intuition, because you know, deep down when things are off, and when things are also really, really right. So, paying attention to how you feel. If you're feeling all problematic situations, all problematic situations. It does not matter if it's a relationship, if it's a friendship, if it's a stranger following you in an alley, if it's a business deal, any of that. They all tend to start off with that funny feeling of, that's kind of weird. And that first level of, that first sign of confusion, that's what we need to pay attention to, because oftentimes, that might be the only sign that a person really gets. And so, in the book, The Gift of Fear, he talks more, Gavin D. Becker, the author, talks more about this. And, it's, his, background is, he focuses more on, predators, which I guess it's kind of the same. My goal here is more like emotional predators. His is more, really violent, dangerous people, deadly people. And so he was saying, following your intuition. And he said, when men pursue, they tend to be nice. And when women reject, they tend to be nice. And so this can put women at a very serious disadvantage, because, and I've been there, where we might find ourselves in a really uncomfortable situation, but because we want to be nice, we don't do what we feel we need to do. So we might, because we don't want to hurt their feelings, male or female, we don't want to hurt their feelings, so we don't cross the street, right? Or we don't quickly lock our doors when we get into the car, because we don't want to hurt their feelings. And that's really problematic behavior. And so, one of the points in his book is we need to kind of get over that, feeling bad, like kind of people pleasing, and being like, okay, you know what? If I hurt their feelings, that's not my intention, but I need to err on the side of caution. So yes, listening to your intuition. Feelings like, okay, so after the feelings of confusion, that those tend to progress. If we stay in that dynamic, if it's a relationship or what have you, those feelings tend to progress. And then it tends to be, the next level tends to be that level of introspection. Is it him? Like, is it him or is it me? Or is it her or is it me? And that level of, who has the problem here? Like, am I hypervigilant, or am I really experiencing problematic behavior and not being able to tell? That's a problem. And that's also a very sure sign of cognitive dissonance is setting in. So cognitive dissonance is, this feeling of mental distress between our beliefs and our behaviors. And so, because we need them both to line up. And if they don't, then we either fix our beliefs to justify our behaviors, or we change our behaviors to match with our beliefs. And so if we're experiencing problematic behavior and we're like, is it him or is it me? If we really want to stay in that relationship, then we're going to justify or minimize or deny or blame or, rationalize in some way, shape, or form the problematic behavior in order for us to stay in this relationship. And so that's another reason we were talking earlier about how other people don't understand. It's because, and oftentimes when victims get out of these relationships, they don't understand either. And there's this heavy level of guilt and shame associated with, I cannot believe I can't believe I stayed. And there's just kind of this embarrassment about all of it, like how we were treated. But it's because really it's because there's a lot of cognitive dissonance going on where we were just denying it. So a good example of cognitive dissonance in motion is like any Jerry Springer episode. Like really, it's or Maury Povich, right? Where you've got these like crazy Lifetime TV movie kind of situations where you've got, I don't even know. We'll use the example of the woman being problematic. Here's this woman who's been sleeping, she's married and she's sleeping around with 5 different guys, and now she's on the show to get a paternity test, right? And the whole time her husband has been buying all of her excuses, and maybe she's even 9 months pregnant, and her husband is in denial that she's actually pregnant. He's telling himself that she's just gaining weight, right? And the whole audience is like, what? How does that even happen? It's cognitive dissonance. That's how that happens. So it's really important for for you to pay attention to how you feel. So if once that is it me or is it them kind of feeling subsides, if well, it doesn't subside. Once it's kind of stuffed down, because that's really what it is, that tends to progress into generally anxiety, which is like comes across as paranoia or insecurity, right? And of course, the victim's often being told, well, you've got issues with trust, you're being too sensitive, you're the problem in some way, shape, or form. So then, if that so that level of anxiety and paranoia and insecurity continues, then it generally goes to depression, right? And so then a lot of victims tend to get on antidepressants, and they don't understand. They really kind of feel like that they just have kind of a complicated relationship with somebody. And so maybe they're reading book, of course, because the victim that's staying is believing the abusive person's reality. They're taking it on as their own. And so they might be thinking that they're the problem. So now they're reading all these self-help books. They're wanting to go to marriage retreats. They're in therapy. And it can really just be a big tangled up mess, especially if they have a therapist who doesn't see what's going on, which happens all the time. And then it's kind of this re-victimization where now you've got the abusive partner and the therapist against the victim, trying to get the victim to change. And so it's, if this level of cognitive dissonance and this level of codependency is not fixed, it can lead to death. This is such a big deal. I mean, codependency kills. So it's either the victim will die by the death of by the hands of their partner if they're in if they're in a really bad relationship. Not even it doesn't have to be really bad. I mean, it can go like look Lacey Peterson, right? So it can go really quickly from decent relationship to murder, or it can go this level of depression if it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going, and the victim's being blamed for everything under the sun and being ground down. It can lead to suicide, or it can lead to a slow suicide through drugs and alcohol, and the victim trying to cope with their relationship and just still not identify what's going on. So it's so heartbreaking to see people go through this because it's such a big deal. And so when I keep talking about this concept of empty buckets, this is right up there with like eating and sleeping and breathing and basic self-care. Like it has to, you've got to learn how to nourish yourself in some way, shape, or form. Because getting tangled up with the wrong person, if you're not able to nourish yourself, it can lead a person to a really bad, scary place really quickly. So, okay, lots of comments here. Jessica, great comment. She said Jodi Arias equals somatic narcissist and psychopath. Yeah, she was something. You know what's interesting though? So I was watching a I don't know if it was like court footage or whatever, and they played a bunch of videotapes about the her boyfriend that she murdered. I kind of think that he might have been a little personality disordered himself. He like some of the stuff that they were playing on there. I'm like, wow. And that's what happens when you get this dynamic of like you've got two really like dysfunctional people together, that, and remember how we talked about like the empty buckets. So like codependents try to get their buckets filled by giving to other people, in hopes that the other people will eventually give back to them, whereas narcissists tend to take and take and take. So here in this dynamic, you have Jodi Arias, and you had her boyfriend who had a lot of problematic behavior. He said a lot of really disturbing things, and there you had two takers. And so then it's kind of this showdown of who has more problematic behavior. Well, guess what? Jodi Arias did. And so that's how some of these relationships can end. It's scary stuff. Jessica says, "Yeah, I always thought that Travis was a narc himself." Yeah, I after seeing a lot of you know, the videotapes and stuff, it was really disturbing. Um, let's see. Hold on. Okay, Martine, you are now a moderator. And we're going to go with Jessica too. Okay, I don't know what's going on with the blocking of comments. It's not me. It's not me. I don't know how that's happening. But well, maybe, I mean, I guess another moderator could block you, but I don't think that they would be doing that. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. Okay, Naysan says being a boring target is ideal. 1 year down, hopefully this year or the next, he'll forget about me and stop creating more email accounts. Yeah. Well, I wouldn't be a boring target if you can just be a non responsive target, because any type of response whatsoever it just eggs them on. So I would just encourage you just to not respond. Respond back. Cecilia says, "You guys know I'm not the only moderator, right?" So yeah. Let's see. Oh wait, are you talking to me, Cecilia? I don't know who you're talking to. Cecilia says, "If you're going to put me on blast like that and not give me info, like what's the point?" Was I in the middle of answering your question and I forgot? Because that does happen to me. Um, oh wait. Hold on. It's chaos over here. Oh, okay. Okay, I got you. Cecilia was talking to somebody else in the group, and I thought I poor Cecilia. Everybody's like nominated her to do Troll Patrol, and she's oh my gosh. Okay, I banned somebody. So hopefully that was the one that was causing the problems. So she says, "Okay, you're fine, Dana." Okay, good, because oftentimes it's like trying to walk and chew gum at the same time. It's really hard for me to talk and read the comments at the same time. And my little hamster like falls off the wheel a lot. So That is a great question. Okay, so I'm not going to say this name correctly, probably, but Chimeri asks, how long did it take for you to realize your last boyfriend was a narcissist? What was the defining moment that made you say, wait, this isn't love? Um, well, from my perspective, okay, so real quick, Martine, if you kind of scroll to like the right and you see those three dots, if you click on those, it'll give you the different options for each user. Um, and you can, it'll say like block user or something. M. Fisher says, Dana, you got a pop out chat button on your screen? I don't think so. I don't think so. Um, so let me answer the question. Let me scroll back up here because that was a really great question. Okay. How long did it take for you to realize your last boyfriend was a narcissist? And what was the defining moment that made you say, wait, this isn't love? So, in my situation, I had dated Steve. It was a couple years after I dated Jack. And I really thought that my relationship with Jack was a fluke. I didn't, I dated one really problematic guy when I was in high school, but that was, a million years ago. So and my ex-husband was a good man. And so I didn't have a pattern of in like lifetime TV movie kind of relationships. So I just really thought that I got tangled up with Jack because I was vulnerable because I was fresh out of a divorce, and that's kind of what I chalked it up to. That was only partially correct. So because I thought it was a fluke, I really, and I'm here. I am doing all this reading, and so I'm like, okay, well, narcissists are only like 2 or 3% of the population. So like statistically speaking, I'm probably not going to come across another one, right? Or at least date another one. And because again, I had kind of learned all of these wrong lessons. So I'm like, well, I'm not going to date European men anymore, and I'm not going to date, whatever I was telling myself. I'm not. I'm gonna wait until I'm not gonna date for a while after I need to go through therapy and like heal from my divorce, and then I'll be fine. Then this will never happen to me again. Well, kind of fast forward a couple years, I began dating Steve, who I had known on a very casual level, and right away, my night terrors kicked up again, and there were red flags there. My brain was trying to warn me of them. I had again that feeling of that's kind of weird, followed by is it him or is it me, right? And then kind of justifying it, slipping into that cognitive dissonance and telling myself, well, um, I must have issues with men or with trust or with commitment because he's such a wonderful man. And so I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to lose. I didn't want my issues to end the relationship was really what it was. And so I began, talking to other friends about it, and my mom and everybody that met Steve absolutely loved him. And they were like, Dana, it's, you can trust him. He's a really good guy. We don't have any weird feeling about him. And because I didn't trust my judgment, I listened to them. And so that was another big lesson learned for me was, if you we all absolutely have to trust our judgment because other people may not pick up on the same clues and same red flags that we do. There's no shortage of well-intended bad advice out there. So there's no substitute, to listening to your own intuition. So I my relationship with Steve was about 6 months, and it was really, really fantastic the whole time. He was absolutely Prince Charming. He was, just like Jack, like just really, really good to me, and everything was great. And then it was, we were having some issues over his religion, and nothing that I didn't think that we couldn't work through. And then he he just kind of upped and left and was like, I've got to move back. I miss my son misses me, I've made a huge mistake. Tells me this whole story that his ex-wife had developed cancer and he was going to go back and take care of her. And then his ex-wife, who turned out to still be his wife, and I began talking. She called me and we began talking. And then that was when it became crystal clear. She was, just telling me all of everything that she had experienced with him. And that this was not the first time he had done this to her, and that there had been this like kind of pattern of ongoing behavior, that his own mother, in fact, had pulled her aside at one point and had said, there's something wrong with him. He lacks the ability to love. And so the more I heard her describing the scenario, the more I very quickly realized this guy is exactly like Jack. And this is like, I was ready to kind of consider calling it quits based on religion, let alone all of, like, it was just so like, oh, hell no. Like, it was so much chaos and confusion and drama and dysfunction that she was telling me about that they had gone through. And so here's another interesting thing with that. So the way she was describing it to me was, she's like, well, the good times are really good, the bad times are really bad. But they had this really intense soulmate connection that she just couldn't get past, and that they had gone through so much together. Those were her exact words. And I didn't know about the term Stockholm syndrome at the time. And that is basically, it's very common. So if a person's in an abusive relationship, to sympathize with their abuser. And so, and this is because, again, like, abusive people are rarely 100% bad, right? So, it was this whole holding on to, well, justifying. It's cognitive dissonance is what it is. So it's justifying the bad treatment. It's well, this person had a bad childhood, or they were abused, or they were an alcoholic at the time, or. And so even though the abusive person's putting them through hell, in the victim's mind, it's that they went through hell together. And so that's this whole trauma bond that forms, where it's this idea of, look at what we've been through. We've been through so much. And it's like, no, you haven't. You've been dragged through so much, and you've put up with so much. But if you're in it and you're thick in that fog of cognitive dissonance, then that person's not going to see it that way. So I guess, long story short, my it took me the ending of that relationship to fully see it. Now, and I had to go around that mountain a couple times. Now, with problematic behavior, I tend to, as soon as I find myself feeling confusion and then wondering if it's me or if it's them, I am out the door, and I just kind of err on the side of caution. So it's really hard to walk away oftentimes, because that during that love bombing and during that the good times are really good. It's much easier to walk away during all of that if your buckets are full. Because if the buckets are not full, it's this attitude of scarcity. Like, it's this whole idea of, well, yes, this person has a ton of problematic behavior, but I don't want to be alone, or, this could be like the perfect relationship. It's kind of more of what the thought process tends to be. It's this whole idea of, I don't want to ruin this perfect relationship by focusing on problematic behavior, because nobody's perfect, right? But that's really faulty thinking, because when we're dating somebody, we really need to look at them through, like, under a magnifying glass and not through rose-colored glasses. And that's really hard to do, especially if our buckets are empty. So if our buckets are full, then it's much easier to have kind of this attitude of abundance and realize, well, there's like 6 billion people with a B in this planet, and, half of them are women, half of them are men. So if this guy or this girl doesn't work out, I've got, close to 3 billion other ones out there. So Okay, so here got a question from Sam. Sam says, I am a 16-year-old girl and I live with narcissistic parents. I don't know what to do. I used to self harm because of it from when I was 8 to 13, and I haven't done it. Do you have, let's see, scrolling up here. Do you have advice on how to deal with them? So, Sam, I'm sorry that you're going through this. That is really, really rough, I'm sure, on many different levels. And I'm glad to hear that you are no longer self harming. I think that's a really great step in the right direction. Um, there's there's actually quite a few different support groups out there for children of narcissistic parents or children of abusive parents, kind of depending on what you're, kind of more specifically like what you're going through. There's also groups out there for teenagers having to do with like bullying and and my guess is too like groups that are for teenagers, dealing with abusive parents specifically. So I would look around online. I think that could be a really great resource. Um, Kind of depending on what they're doing, I don't know if if that's something that you're comfortable talking to like a school counselor about, or if there's somebody that you trust that you can go to talk about kind of what's going on at home. At a bare minimum, I would encourage you to try to distance yourself a little bit emotionally and realize that their behavior is not a reflection of you, that their behavior is a reflection of them. And so, you know, if they're telling you things, if they're treating you poorly, to realize that they have a lot of issues, and it's not right and it's not fair that they're taking them out on you, but it's the abuse that you're encountering is not because there's something wrong with you. Okay, it's really important that you know that. And so you are worthy. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of being treated with dignity and with respect. All living creatures are. Okay, so that's how I know that you are also worthy of these things. And you know it's really unfortunate when I think parents and they have kids and they haven't worked through a lot of their own stuff yet, and then their kids end up getting kind of getting in the situation and they get the brunt of it. So if it's bad at home, if you're feeling like it's not a safe environment, if it's um, problematic enough where you're toying with the idea of trying to leave, then I would consider confiding in like a school counselor and seeing if maybe there's a way that you could go live with somebody else, or if you could kind of what some different options are. Tasha says, save your money and get out when you're 18. I would agree with that. At a minimum, kind of plan your escape. So, I think a lot of people, when they grow up in abusive homes, they tend to leave at 18. They tend to do it in maybe like one of a couple different ways. So they tend to either up and join the military, they tend to up and get married, or they tend to up and go to college as far away as they possibly can. So, you know, I'm not saying that any of those are ideal, but I think those tend to be a lot of coping strategies for a lot of people. I definitely would not recommend getting married or necessarily even joining the military as kind of like a knee jerk reaction to get out of the house. But going to school, moving away, possibly living with a different relative, these kinds of things might be some healthier options. Okay, looks like some people are giving some tips as to some other YouTube channels on narcissistic families. Ollie Matthews, I'm not familiar with him. Very cool. Okay. Apparently, Ollie Matthews comes highly recommended. I'll have to check him out. Um, so, kind of bottom line with like surviving narcissistic parents is, I think you need to do what you need to do in order to stay as safe and as sane as possible. And as you know, as you're getting older, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to not understand what you went through. And a lot of people tend to have this idea of, that we need to quote unquote forgive and forget, and that we need to allow abusive people back into our lives. And that, this idea of, oh, well, it's Christmas, so you need to forgive, or, you should really go talk to your mom. I mean, she's your mom, stuff like that. My opinion, my take on that is it's completely appropriate and acceptable and healthy if you have an abusive person in your life and you decide, that you don't want to have contact with them anymore, or you want to have really limited contact, that's okay. So you're going to have to kind of navigate what feels healthiest for you, what keeps you on that side of safe and sane, and realizing that other people are not going to understand, and knowing that kind of going into it. So when they do show their ignorance and they try to push you back into reopening communication with either or both of your parents, to it's okay to stand firm and to hold your ground, and to let them know, like, hey, you know what, I they were very abusive, and I don't want that in my life anymore. You don't have to justify, you don't even have to say that. Like, you don't need to justify or apologize or explain or anything to anybody. So just know that. Okay, Cece says, do I need to acknowledge my narcissistic mom? She had a birthday coming up. She will be 75. No, that's totally your call. It's whatever you feel is keeps you safe and sane. If you think contacting her, and I don't know the whole dynamic of your situation, but if I'm sorry, I'm laughing. Somebody wants to see if I'm wearing pajama pants. I'm not actually wearing pajama pants tonight. I will show you here in a second. But your decisions are your decisions are your decisions, and you're an adult, and you can do whatever you feel like you want to do. And again, this kind of goes back to with the 16-year-old, with family dynamics with narcissists, people really don't understand that. People understand child abuse, kinda, and the general public kind of understands domestic violence, but only if the victim's female. They really don't understand an abusive situation if it's not horrendously physically violent. They don't understand it if it's like verbal or emotional, and if it's with a parent. There's really this idea of we need to forgive and forget because they're family and blood's thicker than water, and that was in the past, this is the present, and we need to, take the higher ground and blah, blah, blah. My whole take on this is, an abusive person is an abusive person is an abusive person. And so it's up to you as far as like the line that you want to walk, as far as what feels comfortable for you. But you don't owe an abusive person anything as far as I'm concerned. So, oh, my pants. Nope, just that's what my socks. My socks and my regular pants. So, okay. So Cece says, I had all of the abuse except sexual. And so here's the thing with that, Cece. That's an awful lot of abuse for a person to go through. And even experiencing one form of abuse is a totally valid reason to distance yourself from a person who's causing you pain. So it's really whatever you decide that you want to do. And, you don't owe an abusive person anything. Eddie says, I'm just checking, kid, on my pajama pants. Everybody knows I tend to get comfortable for these live streams because I stay up past my bedtime. So Okay, Cecilia says, at first it made me feel special to be with somebody like him. Um, so, yeah, I think that's how a lot of us feel. You know, this person is really charming and charismatic. And, here's another example of that. So, I look at, the whole remember Arnold Schwarzenegger and how he'd gotten his housekeeper pregnant? And, here she was, just kind of this frumpy woman who, physically looks, night and day different from Maria Shriver and, this whole thing. My guess is the housekeeper probably felt that exact same way. Here's this incredibly handsome, powerful, successful, charismatic man, and he's interested in me. And so that's kind of how they, tend to make victims feel. Whether it doesn't matter what a person looks like, but it's that level of, I feel so fortunate that this person is. I'm so flattered that they're paying me attention, kind of a thing. So, oh, Doug, that's so nice. Doug says, Dana, this is the best 2 hours of my week. Thank you all, and Dana, for sharing everything that you do and all the knowledge you have. You people are just fantastic. Well, Doug, we think that you are pretty super fantastic as well. And I'm glad that you can make it every week. And I'm glad that these are some good time spent. And, um, you know, you have a really awesome attitude. Okay, so M. Fisher says, yeah, and Maria Shriver is a Kennedy too. Wow. So here's the thing with that. I don't think it's a coincidence that he married a Kennedy. I think my guess would be that Maria Shriver was specifically targeted because she was a Kennedy and of her connections and the idea of that he could land a Kennedy because it's, American royalty is what it is. So, yeah, just very strange. Holocene Man says, she was so wonderful, I thought I'd won the lottery. I think all of us feel that way. Yeah, it's absolutely heartbreaking when you start seeing that person start changing and that behavior start changing, and then it's amazing how fast that can change and just do like a 180. Okay. Oh, that's nice. Martine says, I also feel like saying, I love you people. You are awesome. All the people in the chat right now. Practical Dreamer says, it's great to see such a civil group of people, especially on YouTube. I agree. I just, I am so blown away by how supportive and loving and compassionate and open and honest and great everybody here really really is. I feel so outrageously fortunate. I mean, I've had some issues on YouTube, but oh my gosh, like the good is like 99.95% of my experience with people on my channel and in this community and everything have been amazing. Yeah. Practical Dreamer says lots of empaths here, which is probably why we've all had narcs in our lives. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. That's a good question. True Love says, does, oh wait, comment. Um, let me see if I can, scroll bar. Okay, True Love says, does anyone go back to a cheater? What if he isn't a narcissist? Is it easier for two people to repair a relationship in couples counseling if they are if it isn't a narcissist codependent relationship? Maybe not. I mean, so here's the thing, like with finding out whether or not a person's a narcissist or not, you could talk to a dozen different therapists or mental health professionals and probably get at least half a dozen different diagnoses, if not a dozen. So I would encourage you to set labels aside for that reason and instead focus more on what you do know for sure, which is the behavior. And so if a person is cheating, then I think it's important to focus on is, first of all, how did they handle it? Were they forthcoming about what happened? Or was it like trying to pull teeth to get details of it? When the truth did come out, were they accountable and responsible for their behavior? And have they been taking massive action to repair the damage done? Or have they been full of excuses, blaming the other person, blaming you, still being squirrely with their phone, giving silent treatment? So it's kind of, it depends on how they are handling it, because sometimes you know good solid people do cheat, but it's, I don't know if I could ever stay with a cheater, because I could never trust them again. And so that would slowly, uh, I wouldn't want to become that person where I didn't trust. I don't think I could move past that, even if the person I was with. But again, I'm not in the situation, so I'm just kind of, this is what my thought process would be. If like I said, if the person is, if this is a one-time thing versus a pattern, that makes a difference. If they're, accountable and responsible for their behavior, that plays into it a lot. If they're, if they've had a pattern of open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication before, then that counts for a lot. But if they've had a bunch of squirrely behavior, if they've justified and minimized and rationalized and denied and blamed, and there was name calling and there was put downs, and there was a lot of other dysfunctional behavior, then I think that would be a really long uphill battle to try to get that relationship repaired, because there's, that kind of scenario is just a lot of really dysfunctional behavior that it's character really is kind of what it is. And in a person's character is takes a lot of time to change, if it's even possible. So, oh, I love your comment, Cecilia. She says, there's other people in the world. Someone will meet me at a healthy vibrational level when I'm ready for it. And I love that. So I it's funny that you mentioned that. Hey, Randy Andretti's here. I don't know if she just got here or if she's been here, but that's cool. Um, so, um, what was I saying? Oh, the whole like vibrational level thing. So, you know, I think there's a really like a lot to that. So because there's the whole saying that kind of like water seeks its own level, and there's a lot of truth to that. And we tend to also we tend to date people either based on like shared dysfunction or shared function. And I think that's why it's so important to kind of bring your highest and best self, or to get to the place where you're at the highest and best self, because once you are, you're going to attract and be attracted to other people that are at their highest and best self. Versus if these buckets are emptied and we're coming from a place of dysfunction, we might be really insecure about things. We might have addictions. We might have some unresolved things in our life, like maybe a bankruptcy or something that makes us feel like, well, we wouldn't attract our ideal partner right now. And so because we're really insecure with who we are, then, it's because we're insecure with who we are, we might make more allowances for problematic behavior in another person, because we're kind of projecting ourselves onto them, thinking like, well, I've got all this stuff that's kind of going on with me and I need to get this ironed out. So I don't want to be too, critical of them. So I'm just going to kind of gloss over some red flags. So I think that's another kind of reason to get at that place. Cecilia says, I was very vulnerable when he came back into my life like a white knight. Yes. And so many of them are. It's kind of this whole Prince Charming thing. Offered shelter and security. Okay, so kind of, filling some of those empty buckets, right? And that's what they do. And that's the thing. So like when these buckets start running low, that's when they turn into vulnerabilities, and that's how they manipulate us. And so it's sort of like, okay, well, once we know what the buckets are, then it's we can at least have that on our radar for things to watch out for. So let's say, for example, let's say, you lose your job, and now you're faced with possibly being homeless, and now you meet this wonderful man, who kind of white knight Prince Charming thing, and he's like, well, you can move in with me, and I'll just kind of I'll rescue you from your life, right? And so because we don't have a lot of options, we're this bucket's low, we're in a scramble is what it is, right? So like we don't have a job, we don't have money, we're in a panic, and so we're going to probably hop on to that deal. I mean, who wouldn't, right? Because it's scary, and it's scary to go through scary stuff alone. I've been there too. And so but that's what makes us really vulnerable. Whereas if you had money in savings, or whereas if you had a job, then you you might have been thinking a lot more clearly, and you would not have been in a scramble, because it wouldn't have been a vulnerability. Interesting. Michael says, mine pretended to be an animal rescue worker. She made a card and put it in her window of her car. Everything she did was above and beyond for attention. Is this typical? Yes. Yeah, it is. And it's like just the level, and like just the bizarre lies. It's just all public image, and it's all ego. It's very, very strange. Heather says, I'm newly split up with him, and I feel like I can't live without him. I'm having a hard time. Everyone thinks I'm just heartbroken. So that's very common. I just want you to know that. And it does pass. Okay. And so that's the thing. Like when we get out of any type of relationship, even if it's a good relationship, and it comes to an end for whatever reason, there's still that feeling of heartbreak and devastation, and you know craving, oftentimes. So a lot of that's really normal. It will pass. Relationships with narcissists tend to really foster or exacerbate that feeling of clinginess or desperation that we feel. It's this kind of this whole like love addiction thing that a lot of victims tend to feel when they leave, especially if we've made them our whole world. So yeah, I don't know if you were here, Heather, when we were talking about the whole empty buckets thing. Okay, so you know, if so we have three different buckets. We have the bucket of safety, significance, and stability. And so the bucket of safety is like food, clothing, shelter. Significance is love, affection, attention, importance, and stability is money. It's kind of the security that the other two buckets are going to continue being filled. So it's kind of like reliability, I guess. And so if those buckets run low, then they become vulnerabilities, and that's how manipulative people, by and large, are able to kind of worm their way into our lives. So, and especially if you have done what a lot of us have done, which is to make this person our whole world, and we're relying on them to fill our empty buckets, or to it's this idea of, if they don't give us love, then we're never going to have love again, we're never going to experience anything like this again. And this is all this is just your it's really kind of, it's a your brain trying to it's kind of your mind playing tricks on you. It's really easy to lose perspective when these relationships come to an end. And, if you haven't already joined some support groups, I would strongly encourage that you do so, because that can be a really great network. You're talking with a bunch of other like-minded people that have been there, they've done that. Everybody believes you, which is very validating. And so it's in there, and they're there 24/7. And it's, depending on the support, I always encourage people to join a few of them and see which one kind of resonates the best with you. But you know it can really be a great support. And a lot of what you're talking about, people tend to post in there on a regular basis. And so then the group, it's nice because then the group can kind of rally around and help kind of keep them on track and keep them focused on why they need to not go back, and how to kind of move forward into redirecting that energy into something positive. So, but I think sometimes it and I remember being there. It can just be really reassuring to just know that you are not always going to feel this bad. You really, really aren't. You will not feel this bad in a month from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now. Like, every single day you're healing more and more. It's just in small ways, okay? But it does add up. And a week from now and a month from now, you will feel better than you do right now. So just kind of have faith in that. So, okay, guys, I gotta call it a night here in about 3 minutes. Our Kaler says, my ex had the IQ of a clam. Once I caught her affair, I lost all desire for her physically, and I told her I would be getting an STD check. That was exactly my reaction to our Kaler, when I realized that kind of the gig was up, and that this person was not who I thought that they were at all. I just was like ice cold. I was just done. My mom, now that's not to say, like, fast forward a couple days, I found myself, really having those feelings of love and attachment. But what really helped me was to separate the idea of, I don't love them. I love the idea of who I thought they were, and really making that crystal clear in my mind. That really helped me to move on. Okay, Adrian is asking, Dana, clarify about diagnostics. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean as far as diagnostics? Cecilia got herself checked out health-wise today. That's awesome. Good for you. That's good self-care. So yay you for that. Okay, lots of people going to bed. So Adrian, I'm going to stay on until I hear back from you so you get your question answered, and then we'll call it a night. Jojo says, thank you for sharing. It was so helpful to hear all of this. It was very validating. So good. I'm glad. I am glad that helped. Okay, True Love asks, can you tell us again how to deal with flashbacks, the flashbacks of the good memories? Just tell yourself that you're having a feeling, recognize it, and let it pass. Yeah, you could do that. So when I found myself really missing the good times, I would just validate that and be like, well, you know what? Of course you missed that, because who wouldn't miss that person? But that wasn't the real person. That was just a mask. And so I would kind of allow myself to, miss it, but I wouldn't get emotionally involved in it. It's kind of the whole, like you said, distancing yourself, distancing yourself from the emotion and just kind of watching it like you would watch a cloud roll by and not getting attached to it. Okay, so Adrian asks, people label without any discretion. Diagnostics are to know what to work and how. I am still not fully sure what you mean. Are you talking about like the definitions of like a narcissist? Uh, Thanks, Nisa. That's an awesome compliment and comment. She says, "Thank you so much for all your work, Dana. You were so strong and helpful to us all." I thank you. That means a lot to me, and it's really good to be in this place. Uh, I worked hard to get here. Okay, Adrian says, scroll up. Okay, I'm working on it here. Um, R. Kaler says, love you, Dana. You've been so helpful. My sister was a psych nurse too, by the way. Cool. Well, I appreciate all of you guys that were on tonight. So just know that. Um, and let's see, Cecilia says something about on the red flags. There's a series playlist. Yes, somebody had asked earlier about the red flags, and if you go into my channel, and I don't think I can link to it on here, there's a playlist for the different red flags. You can also check out my website, which is narcissistsupport.com, and a lot of the videos and articles and stuff are there as well. So, okay, Adrian, I'm trying to scroll up and down, but the comments are coming in fast. And oh, that's so nice of you, Doug. Doug wishes everybody light and love, and he wishes for Cecilia to find a new support group. I missed what was going on in Cecilia's support group, but I wish you all the best, Cecilia, as well. Oh, okay. Here's Monk's comment from like the first question on tonight. Adrian, I cannot find your question, the more detail for your question. So Monk, I'm going to answer your question really quick, and then Adrian, I'm going to look for yours some more here in a second. Okay, so Monk, as far as like survivor guilt, are you talking about in terms of, you know, other people that might be stuck in the relationship, or kind of the feelings of that you were able to get out, but other people are going to be tangled up in it? So, if that's the case, that's a really great question. Trying to think of like what kind of how I handled that. I don't, honestly, I don't really know if I really did handle that. I had a lot of guilt for a really long time. And I, I think there was so much craziness and chaos going on that it was just kind of this, it just was like one more thing that I didn't even know how to handle. I think the hard part, if we are talking about the same thing, I'm not sure that I'm talking about the same thing or if I'm answering your question correctly. I think it was just kind of a knowing that, kind of the whole serenity prayer kind of thing. It's knowing what you do have control over and then what you don't have in control over, and just kind of taking action on what you do have control over and then making peace with what you don't. And so, because narcissists are so manipulative, there's not a lot that we really do have control over, because trying to warn others, these kinds of things, it tends to backfire, and nobody believes us. So, again, getting into a support group oftentimes helps. Just trying to take that energy that you have with your survivor guilt and then refocusing it back into yourself, and I wish I could give you a better answer on that. That's tough. I'll be curious to see if anybody else has any answer on survivor guilt and kind of how you handled it or what you recommend. Okay. Okay, Adrian, I'm scrolling up and I still don't see your question. Oh, what is going on? Suzanne says, it was nice seeing everyone's comments. This is my first live session. So welcome. I'm glad. Martine says he feels inspired. Yes. Okay. So since we're winding down, we've got a couple other people on tonight that have their own channel. So it'd be awesome if you guys would show them some love and subscribe and just support them. And because it takes guts, you know, to do this. So let's see. Randy Andretti has a channel, which is her name. And Cecilia has a channel. Overcoming Understanding has a channel. Looks like Overcoming Understanding's channel is, I believe, called Overcoming Understanding. Cecilia's channel is called, I just saw it. It's something glasses. Let's see. Oh, this chat scroll thing. Okay, it's called I've Lost My Glasses. Okay, yeah, Cecilia, I've Lost My Glasses is her channel. Okay, okay, I don't know what happened to his question. He says, is it okay, Dana? Next Wednesday we will answer it, okay? Okay, perfect. Yes. Yeah, yeah, Randy, I hear you. She says, I guess I feel guilty that the narcissist can't change and get better ever. That's a hard thing. And that's something that I struggled with. I think probably we all struggle with that. That's why we want to stay and help them get help because we realize like, man, that's a hard way to live life. It's full of chaos and confusion and drama and dysfunction and they just don't see that they have a problem. And we like the good in them and we see the good in them and we so want them to just be happy and healthy and well adjusted and to feel love and to give love. And it's so hard to just walk away. I hear you. Yeah. Oh, okay. So Adrian was asking, people misuse like diagnoses and label themselves and others without knowing the big harm they do to themselves. So, yes. And so, that's kind of there's many different reasons I encourage people to, avoid or take caution with labels. A lot of times labels can give a tremendous amount of validation and healing. I think it's helpful to look at labels as more of like a pointer to the behavior that they are pointing to. And so, and to not get hung up on, the definitions themselves because it's people tend to steer into labels. And so if we're giving ourselves a label of, even things like that we might legitimately have, like PTSD or codependency or these kinds of things, I think it's good to have kind of this idea of what we're dealing with, but to really be careful without with not taking that label on as an identity, because a lot of those words are really heavy, and I think that they can keep a person unintentionally stuck, because they have this like really intense diagnoses, right? So, this kind of goes back to maintaining your own power and control at all times, and making sure that we're not inadvertently giving that away, because that's what all of this is all about. So, okay, guys, I gotta call it a night. I got to get to bed. But it was good seeing everybody, and I will talk to you guys next week, same time, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we'll go from there. So, as always, lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can heal from this. So, take care and have a fantastic night. Okay, bye.